and good afternoon. It is Thursday, the 19th of October. I am Chief Curtin of the Ohio Military Reserve, and I'm going to be giving briefing number 3 on our wild card COMEX. This is going to be for the SGAUS 2023 National Tactical Interoperability Communications Exercise. This is going to be like the last one. It's going to go quickly, and we'll have some opportunity for some Q&A if necessary at the end. So the first thing that I want to turn our attention to is going to be the agenda. So we've got a few administrative details we'll take care of. We'll talk more about the focus of the training and how we're going to be organizing the space to make that happen, as well as what the map of the network is going to look like during exercise play. So this should be a nice complement to briefing number 1, where we talked more specifically about, sort of what the parameters of exercise play would look like. This is going to be a little bit more visual presentation of that. This is our last time to brief before the conference. Ticket sales will end on the 1st of November. And that's important for us because right now we don't have any idea how many people we're expecting in the COMEX. So once we have the close of ticket sales, we hope to be able to get some more information from SGAUS about that, which is going to be important, obviously, for us as we are preparing the exercise itself, organizing the troops, making sure that we have enough teams that we're able to make some interesting things happen, but not so many teams that we wind up with every troop as a team all alone. So that doesn't help much either. So a few facts that we have about the operation are that we are going to be physically based in Dayton at the exercise site. We are going to have remote players that are working throughout Ohio, also in Indiana, New York, and we are not going to have HF at the conference site. We're going to connect the conference site to the rest of the network via WinLink. We've got some of the assumptions that I made. First, I mentioned about SGAUS ticket sales. Hopefully, once that's done, we'll be able to get some more information for planning. We are expecting that morning, however, as we see people there, we're going to be doing some adjusting as we get things started. I'm also expecting that we're going to be using FRS radios for on-site voice. It's going to be easiest because it's licensed by rule. We don't have to go through a whole bunch of hoops to figure out who's able to operate where and what they're able to do. So it's going to give us our best option, and everybody's going to be pretty close in. So there shouldn't be any problem with respect to distance covered, the number of obstacles that we have to go through, except to the degree that it can be useful in training. So we might actually send some people out far enough that it is going to be a little bit of a challenge, and we'll have to do a little bit of relaying, but that will be for the purpose more of demonstration. We expect that we'll be able to hold the net together on site without much trouble. Okay, with respect to our training focus, the big thing that we're going for here is viable mission communication. And so the kind of scenario that we're talking about is one where we're having things that are happening out in a field situation. So I've got some imagery up here that's meant to illustrate this kind of thing where you can have local responders are overwhelmed. And now you're talking about your community emergency response teams have become active. They're performing some of that basic medical triage, making sure that people are getting stable. And then we have to perform some kind of communication to be able to get those people to more advanced care. And so this is basically what we're meant to illustrate, is that where we have something that's happening on the scene and we have an SDF that is active in being able to establish and then to operate communication circuits to be able to make sure that people are taken care of. When we get into the business of the exercise itself, we're not going to be going into a lot of detail about the medical stuff. There's going to be that sort of thing there, of course. However, this is a COMEX, a communication exercise. So we're focused on radio operations and the tasks associated with them. For the troops that are on site, at the incident site, if it's a civilian ICP, incident command post, or if they're out of the field operation, they're going to have to prepare their radio for operation. They're going to have to operate the radio. They're going to have to perform voice communication. They're going to have to perform authentication and to communicate in a radio net. Most of these tasks are spelled out in the Soldier's Manual of Common Tasks, so these are not going to be new for most people. And for anybody who's carrying a Signal MOS, they're probably going to be familiar with things like authentication and some of the more advanced stuff that we're going to be doing as well. That's okay because we are going to introduce that earlier in the day before we ask people to do it. At the command posts, there's going to be some more sophisticated stuff happening. Not only do they need to be able to do everything that the field operators are doing, but at a command post, they're providing support for those troops that are in the field. And that means they're going to have to be able to do things like put them into an electronic form, and they're going to have to get into some of the routing and so on. And we're going to be providing that through a tactical LAN. We're going to have it set up in such a way that everybody is going to look like they're at their own command post, separate from everybody else, except the people that they're talking to on the handheld radio. But we're going to use that local network as a way to move things around. And of course, there's going to be some other work that needs to be done at headquarters, and that's the preparing input for an operations order. So, it's kind of, we see some pieces coming together, but there is still the question, of course, how they relate. To make all of this stuff happen, we're going to organize the training space. I took a look at the facility and the way that they have a ballroom set up. And Colonel Patrick said that he's expecting that we'll probably have a 1/4 ballroom. And so what that means is that we're going to be at about 1,100 square feet. It is actually square. And so we are going to be organizing things based on a lot of different things, but we're basically going to have in our first portion of the day, that's going to be where we're doing our instruction. It's going to be classroom discussion of what we're doing. So this is going to be the crawl phase. In the classroom, we're going to configure the space like this. Once we get a little bit further into the day, we're going to move on to the walk phase, and that's where we get into lane training. The lane training is where we're actually going to take the command posts and we're going to start putting them to use. Now, I've drawn them so that they're all centered here in the middle of the room. That's probably not the way it's actually going to work out because we're going to have to deal with power and all of that kind of stuff. So in any case, during lane training, we're going to have the instructor talking about what's going on and walking everybody through the steps that they were just introduced to in the previous session in the classroom. And we're also going to be tying in by video. So if we've got anybody who is not going to be present at the site, but wants to be participating in the exercise, wants to benefit from the training, we're going to have that option as well. That's going to be a Google Meet, just the way that we're doing here. We're going to have an opportunity then for us to go through each of these tasks that we have specified. And everybody's going to have a chance to perform each of those tasks without all the time pressure that comes with having to mix them up and get the right combination of things for the purpose of the exercise. We can actually walk people through, this is the step, remember, this is the task, and they can follow each of those tasks. Because everybody's there together, that means that they can perform both the field operator, voice communication sort of thing, but they can also perform those tasks that take place in the command post. And so that's where we get into having to type things into the computer to create an electronic version of the message, preparing it for transmission beyond the site that we're working. So for the purpose of the exercise, play, and the training, we're going to treat command post A as if it is one site. Command post B is another site, totally somewhere else, not able to see each other, not able to hear each other. They have to use beyond line of sight radio communication to interoperate. That's the way that we're going to play it with all of these command posts. We're just going to tell people to pretend you can't see each other, you can't hear each other. Once we have got everybody through the process of the classroom instruction, we've gone through each of those tasks, and then the lane training where everybody's had a chance to perform each of those tasks, we're going to move on to the exercise itself. There's going to be a little bit of a break, and the exercise is starting at 8 o'clock in the morning. So we're going to be running all through all of this. We're going to have a few 10-minute breaks, but about this time, it's going to be time for lunch. Now, the conference has a lunch on the economy at 1200. We're going to try to make that a little bit more efficient and see if we can figure out how to get food in or something like that. We're going to deal with that early in the day so that we're able to get teams organized during that period of time, give everybody a chance to eat, but not break the training and the flow of all of the learning that's going to be taking place throughout the day. When we get into the COMEX itself, that is the point where we're going to start spreading the troops around. So we'll start configuring them. So you can see in this case, we've got our command posts that have been set up, and we're now putting our troops out there in the field. And so they're going to be wandering around. If we're going to, run them into hallways and send them outside and all kinds of stuff. And being Ohio in early November, there's a pretty good chance that there's going to be a big rainstorm. And so that's always exciting for training purposes. We always try to order up the most realistic possible weather for exercise purposes. So you can see the configuration we've got for the command post Alpha. We've got 2 operators there. We could conceivably have that. Command post Bravo is just going to have 1. This isn't hardwired so that it's definitely going to look like this, but it's meant to show that command posts can have a variety of configurations, and it just sort of depends on what the tasking of a particular command post is, what kinds of resources they have available, and how much help they're going to need there in the command post versus how much they're going to need out there in the field. And so as we've got the troops out there spread around, some of them in the command posts, this is how we're basically getting everybody so that they are now separated, and we have to rely on the communication network to be able to get the job at hand taken care of. So that's where we get to the business of the network itself. And what does the network actually look like? We've got positive information from Ohio. Not only will we have Ohio SDF troops there on site, but we are going to have our auxiliary operators at various points around the state of Ohio on HF. They're going to be on 5 megahertz. There is also a station in Evansville, Indiana, that is part of the Ohio Auxiliary. He trains with us regularly. We've heard from New York is going to be on, and we've heard from Tennessee, but not sure that there's actually going to be any exercise play there. That might not be happening. Maryland, we see, is on today. We don't have a registration information. There's a link for you at the end, sir, if you want to be able to provide some of the details for that. We have not heard from Alaska, California, or Texas. So we're going to have the information about how to participate if you are working remotely available, so that when we are in the training, we've got that video up there, so they're going to be able to see what's happening in the training room, and we'll provide the necessary coordination instructions for anybody who happens to join but they didn't register. We do have a few tricks up our sleeve with respect to the scenario to try to accommodate those. I will say that registrations will be helpful, however, because the exercise planners will know that there are how many command posts there are out there, and that will help us to make sure that we've got some information and an exercise flow that's going to make sense. There might be some exercise artificialities that we have to introduce to be able to support those who have not coordinated but want to play without instruction coming ahead of time. This map shows us, on the left side, we've got the, sort of North America here and where we have all of the different play. And we zoom in on the area that covers from Indiana up into New York and then down into Tennessee, which shows sort of what the distribution of stations looks like. The network that we have is one that we use regularly, and it should be pretty interesting to see it working in this case. Down below, I've got a logical representation of what that looks like. So obviously, the action is taking place on the front lines where the troops are, the guys with the handheld radios that are going to be given instructions where they see what information are they going to have to capture and how to relay it and so on. And so these are the little green guys that we've got down in the bottom right. The lines show the way that they are able to talk to one another. And in the case of Command Post Alpha, we've got only 2 troops out there. The command post and both troops are able to hear one another. No problem there. Command Post Charlie, there are 4 troops, but they can all still hear each other. They can all hear the command post, no problem. Command Post Delta is a little bit interesting, though, because Delta, you can see that there are 5 troops out there, 4 of whom can hear each other and the command post, but one of the troops cannot hear the command post and can hear only 2 of the other troops. So that's an example of what I was talking about. If we're getting somebody a little bit out of range, that's a scenario that we do need to be able to deal with. For those who are working in the field, they're going to be working with line of sight. And so that's the kind of condition that we're going to have to make sure that we're able to work through. And so this is an opportunity to illustrate what that looks like. The site net, as I have it shown as this cloud in the middle, this is a network that is tying together the command posts Alpha, Charlie, and Delta, as well as the headquarters command post. So this shows the arrangement of the circuits for each of the command posts. The examples we show are Alpha, Charlie, and Delta. For something to go from one of the troops in Team Alpha to go to one of the troops in Team Charlie, it'll have to go from the troop at Alpha to the command post at Alpha, the command post at Alpha to the command post at Charlie, and from the command post at Charlie down to the troop that actually needs the information. The site net is how those things are going to be tied together. Well, what happens if, Chief Martino's got some information that he wants to be able to send in from New York? He can do just the same thing because we have set up a system that ties the circuits together. And so in this case, Chief Martino is able to use the WinLink system to be able to bring a message in. And there's an address that I'll give him for that. So he can take that, he can put it into the system, and then it will route appropriately so that it will actually be received by some command post that is in the Black Swan HF net. The Black Swan HF net is operating on 5 megahertz, so we can have shares and amateur stations working in the same circuit. We also have gateways on that 5 megahertz circuit to a 7 megahertz circuit, as well as to the WinLink system. So one of those Black Swan stations will receive the message from New York via WinLink, will then list it on the Black Swan net to the station that is responsible for covering the headquarters command post. And then once that happens, the headquarters command post will be able to receive that message via Black Swan from the station that received it from WinLink. The headquarters station will then receive it and then looks to see what its addressing looks like. Where does it go from there? And so if it's sent to one of those troops down there in Team Charlie, well, we've got the same mechanism of capture and relay is set up here so that it can go from New York to WinLink to Black Swan to a command post, which then relays it to the headquarters, which then goes over the site net to command post Charlie, from command post Charlie down to the individual recipient. So the same thing is going to be true with all of these. We'll have several of these various command post stations operating on the Black Swan net. We'll have WinLink tying them all together. We did some checking into what options we've got for the site. Running HF into the site, in the beginning, we thought probably wasn't going to work. We decided to give it a second look anyway, just to see if we could figure out how to make it go, and it's just not really viable. I talked with some of the amateurs in the area down there, and there were some issues with respect to how to get an HF relay set up, and if we were going to go to VHF and then VHF to HF. We decided rather than introduce that level of complexity, which could potentially take away from exercise play on site, we're just going to keep it simple by tying that headquarters command post into the Black Swan net via WinLink. As an artificiality of the exercise, we're going to have, instead of, for example, New York sending directly to headquarters, we're going to have New York send to the station in Black Swan, so that we're going to simulate that action as if headquarters CP was actually tied into the Black Swan net via HF, since that's the net that covers Ohio. Ohio's got a nice kind of square shape, which makes it very convenient for us to be able to use, one net to tie all the things together. It's not like Florida, where you've got these shapes where your propagation isn't necessarily going to be favorable. So that's basically the structure that we have that shows the entire network. And that's going to be a number of nets. Chief Martino might have a whole bunch of stuff going on in New York that we don't know about. He can have all of these other command posts and a whole bunch of troops in play, and that would be great. For the purpose of our network, though, we don't need to see all of that. For the purpose of our network, he can do whatever it is that makes sense for New York in the same way that any of the other SDFs can do what makes sense for them. The point is that we standardize on the message format, and then we set up a system that will tie the various circuits together with a circuit that is used specifically for the purpose of connecting them together. So it's not like somebody hits push to talk and now every player in every state hears everything that's going on. We capture, we relay and direct it to just the right place so everybody gets to see only the stuff that they need, and the circuits are available to receive whatever it is that they need to send. So that's the structure that we're going to be building up from the very beginning, going through that in the classroom, the lane training, which is going to show each of the tasks and how that can actually get done. Then we'll spend the rest of the day until 1500 actually exercising it. We'll go through some stuff, bring everybody back together, let them change places if they like, go through another scenario, and so on. We'll stop and we'll go through a hot wash, and that will get everybody through the process of making sure that we capture all of the things that we learned during the exercise, things that can help us to improve future exercises, and then get everybody on their way to the next panel, I think is at 15:15. So that's what we're looking at for the training day, and the way that we're going to organize the space, make use of the circuits, and get everybody some good training to show viable radio communication for the purpose of supporting a medical mission. At this point, I think we'll turn to see the task list. This is the same mission essential task list that we put in the beginning. Most of these come from U.S. Army Common Tasks. Some of them are going to be from the 25 Charlie MOS, and there's a couple of them you can see with the SDF-COM prefix. Those actually are part of the Ohio system of building up a state defense force version of the 25 Charlie that is going to be appropriate for the unique mission profile that we have in needing to interoperate with civilian authority and to be able to sort of act as the glue between military and civilian in a disaster kind of scenario. If you are interested in seeing these tasks ahead of time, I do have pages that I can provide that will give you a definition of the task, what all the performance steps are, and what the criteria are for being able to succeed in that task.
Hey, Chief, so it all sounds good. You're going to put out support documents prior to StartX, things that we have to have eyes on. And as far as the authentication, you have like a training dryad sheet that's going to be in the support docs as well?
There is, and in fact, there is in Ohio, we do have a dryad book. So I'm actually going to give you the page for that day. So if we want to do anything crazy like tune in to the HF over the internet with a Kiwi SDR or something, we'll actually be able to hear the emissions that are going on there, and we'll be able to hear or to see the authentication depending on whether they're using voice or digital. They'll probably be using digital for the most part, but we'll be able to pick those up. And so everybody will be able to have the same authentication, which will be kind of cool. So I'll definitely have that for you.
Yeah, Roger. I use the SDR K3FEF out of PA, so I'm hoping that maybe I can monitor real world operations through that SDR. So it sounds like you're going to use 60-meter channels. Is there a channel in particular on 60 that you tend to use?
Yeah, there's actually signal operating instructions for the Black Swan net, and I can follow up this call with that link. You start on channel 4. If it's busy or you have to do something side channel to pass traffic while something else is happening, it starts at 4, then 5, then 1, then 2, then 3 is the pattern.
Yeah, because I mean, even in my brain, I'm thinking if I can actually establish a link from New York on 5 meg and send my message in to the Black Swan WinLink network, I would at least attempt to do that rather than just the telnetting option.
Yep.
So that's why I kind of want eyes on that. So just to recap, you're going to put together support documents that you'll kick out to folks so that they can have their eyes on that prior to StartX. And StartX, we're looking at 0800 on that Saturday. Is that what that is? It's a Friday.
That's correct. Yeah.
Right. Good thing, Chief. Thanks.
And if the 5 megahertz doesn't work for you, we do also have a relay circuit on 7 megahertz. My guess is that that'll be more likely to get in. That's going to be amateur 7 megahertz. So if you want to come in with your amateur station, again, that's in the SOI. I'll make sure that you've got that as well. We'll have somebody there who's monitoring and is able to relay from 7 megahertz over to 5.
Yeah, Roger that. I put out an Allcon message, and Alaska did express that they were going to participate remotely.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so if you get a chance afterwards and look at the group chat, I did see here that Major Stefan said Alaska will play remotely, and of course
Awesome.
we already have Lieutenant Colonel Bailey here, so that's good. Okay.
That's fantastic. All right. Looking forward to that. All right. Colonel Bailey, over to you.
So I'm not sure how much we're going to be able to participate on HF because the only antenna I have is my field antenna.
Yeah, if you are going to be in operation, sir, I expect that you should be able to reach from Maryland into Ohio. 7 megahertz will be probably a viable circuit that day if you're up and running from there. Are you going to have anybody on site in Ohio?
No. Some of our cyber guys are going to be there for the cyber portion of the conference, but they're not going to be participating in the COMEX.
Okay.
And you had mentioned in a previous meeting about um, also having things broadcast through SDR so people can monitor. So, but we will be able to do WinLink and SDR in order to monitor things, and then hopefully, if we can get the HF connection, we can do that.
Sure. Anything else for the good of the order then? All right. Hearing none, we'll go ahead and we'll get the meeting closed. I'll follow up with these links so for the registration and all the other stuff that we have that comes out ahead of the exercise. We'll make sure we've got all that put together for you into a packet. We'll have that out for you sometime on or before this time next week. Thank you so much. Looking forward to working with you all.